going to talk about mentorship. And one of the most critical components of designing your mentoring experience as a graduate student, or if you're working with graduate students, and that's creating a mentorship map. What you see on the screen right here is a very basic mentoring map. There are a lot of variations of this, from simple through a little bit more detailed, through very advanced and a little bit complicated and scary looking. But what we're going to do today for our purposes is do a walkthrough of a really basic model, just to get you started understanding how you can use a mentoring map and how it can really help you leverage your own networks and those of your own mentors to really help you get ahead in your graduate career. Because there are plenty of these models out there, and we've just seen a few of these, we're not really going to share a specific model with you here today. I think what we want to do is just share some specific inquiry processes that you can use to create or complete your own mentoring map. All right, so a mentoring map is essentially a directory to your personal mentoring resources, or a mentoring speed dial, if you will. The goal of creating a mentoring map is to identify areas in which you as an individual recognize that you need or want mentorship. So the mentors that you enlist through this process, I should note, are meant to supplement, not to replace the mentorship, the formal mentorship that you're receiving from your academic mentor or advisor, a project or committee chair. But there are 5 basic steps that we need to do to create and complete your mentoring map. First off is knowing your mentoring needs, defining your mentoring questions, sorry, I've cut off my screen suddenly. Categorizing your mentoring needs, finally moving on to identifying those resources. And then we'll spend a little time towards the end on probably the trickiest part of finding a mentor or mentors, is considering the fit of your mentoring relationships and these prospective mentors. All right. So the first thing you want to do is really take a self-inventory of your mentoring needs. What do you want to know? Or more specifically, what do you know you need to learn, but you don't yet know? So let's start there. What are your mentoring goals? And these are going to be informed by where you are in life and what you need to learn. When I first started graduate school, for instance, I needed a lot of guidance in understanding the differences between undergraduate and graduate academic rigor, the importance of publishing and conference attendance, and honestly, a little bit of moral support. And I think especially right now, this is something that a lot of graduate students are feeling, that need for support. So one of the most fundamental questions we need to start with is, what questions do I have? And I recommend starting with the 3 on this screen as very general prompts. Number 1, what do I need to know to succeed in graduate school? What do I want to get out of the mentoring experience? And then finally, what are my goals and desired outcomes? And for this first step of creating our mentoring map, we're really going to just focus on the first of these. So what do I need to know to succeed in graduate school? All right. Once you've clarified the basic needs and goals, take some time to really brainstorm and define as many questions as you can. Create a full brainstorm list of anything from what do I want to learn here, to how do I do this, to what do I need to know about getting along with my mentors or advisors. And what you can see right here is I came up with a few questions. These might be very similar to those that you're experiencing, or they could be entirely different. And as you can see here, these generally align with the question, what do I need to know? What is a CV? What goes on it? How do I publish? How do I submit for publication? What paperwork do I need? There seems to be a ton of it. What's next? Who can help me with this process? How do I get better at presenting? How does networking work? Do I really belong here? All right. So after you've compiled this list of questions, and I'll encourage you to take your time at this. This doesn't have to be a sit down and compile all the questions in one shot deal, because likely they'll come to you over the course of a day or days as you're kind of contemplating them in the background. But once you've compiled this list, you can start clustering them into theme or areas of concern. In this example, I've distilled my questions into core 8 areas. So academic guidance, reassurance and social support, departmental and institutional culture, motivational support, professional skills development, research development, graduate life and survival skills, and career exploration and skill development. So after this webinar, I'd encourage each of you to go back and jot down more of your questions, but then theme them together like this. And if your questions looked similar to mine, feel free to use some of the same buckets or create your own, as many or as few as you need. And once you've identified the core mentoring needs, you can move on with the map itself. The first step that you'll want to do there is identifying potential resources in each of those bucket areas. I like to think of at least 3 people that I can reach out to and include as potential mentors under each area. And for this example, I'm using academic guidance. And as you work through your map, though, the key is to think as holistically and think as broadly as you can. And in some of these areas, it's not just going to be your primary faculty or even faculty within your academic unit who will be best able to support you. And essentially, that's the way you start mapping out a mentoring network. Fairly simple, but before we do move on, I want to bring a couple things to your attention. In some areas, as you can see on the screen here, identifying potential mentors is pretty straightforward, right? For academic guidance, you might go to your thesis or dissertation chair or to a committee member. For departmental or institutional culture, you'll go to your graduate support staff in your unit. For graduate life and survival skills, your go-tos are probably peers or near peers, those that are maybe a year or 2 ahead of you in your academic program. And in some instances, the same faculty members or peers might be at the top of your list for multiple need categories. All right, it's easy to identify resources in these areas because these are content or knowledge-based mentoring relationships. And what you're seeking here are subject matter experts. However, if we look at these 2 areas, here we're not approaching somebody because of their subject matter expertise. Reassurance, social support, and motivation aren't competencies that we're trying to gain, but they're emotional commodities that we're seeking to receive. And I bring this distinction to illustrate a point, and that's that successful mentorship is often about far more than just that knowledge transfer. Sometimes it can be about the personal characteristics of both the mentor and yourself. And this is where we get back to that second question that I posed a few slides back. What do I want to get out of the mentoring relationship itself? So a key to remember is that mentorship always needs to be relational and as well as transactional. And that's another reason to have multiple mentors, even within specific mentoring areas. Another area that we need to consider with mentoring fit is the range of resources that are available to you and who might be the most appropriate fit for different mentoring needs. Obviously, you're going to start with faculty, but also consider your graduate alumni networks, professionals in the field, and even those faculty in adjacent fields. And I know the Graduate College has a really great graduate faculty search tool that can help you filter graduate level faculty by expertise or research area. If your faculty mentor has a really strong content expertise in your area of focus and experience in navigating that area within academia, they're a great asset to you if that's where you want to go, if you do see yourself following that same academic pathway. However, on the other hand, they're less useful to you if you want to go into industry, right? And so this is where networking comes in. And it's perfectly appropriate to ask your faculty members if they can connect you to previous students who had similar research areas, who went into industry or were interested or went into that career pathway that you're interested in, or to ask them if any of their peers and colleagues at other institutions have former students you could connect with. Professional associations and societies are also really great places to meet and enlist mentors. And this is another excellent reason to join those professional associations for your industry or research area, even as you're starting your graduate career. Even if you don't feel that you're ready to start presenting, it's important to start going and making those potential contacts or feeling out who might be good potential mentors for you. And the same goes for the conferences and meetings themselves. They're not only an opportunity to share your research and begin building your professional portfolio or publication record, but that chance again to network. And I strongly suggest seeking out those sessions with folks whose research interests align with your own, whether they're fellow students, their faculty, or industry professionals, and just begin connecting with them. You'll also have your peers and near peers, so those folks that are a cohort or two ahead of you in your programs, because they can give you a heads up on what to expect, what to look for as you advance through the program, and how to prepare for those next steps. Meanwhile, your own peers are likely experiencing the same challenges and pondering those exact same questions that you are. And the near peers can give you advice on how they approached those challenges, or provide other graduate program survival skills that you're not as likely to get from a member of the faculty, or maybe it's a little bit more intimidating to ask faculty member for advice on, right? You can and should also include those individuals whose identities put them in the same demographic groups as you as well. So other students, faculty, and even staff who share common identities, circumstances, cultural perspectives, and therefore can share more nuanced reflections on what might be some of the common challenges to you, to folks of your community. And we often see programming and mentoring support established what we call underrepresented or minority student populations. So students that are the first in their family to attend college, no less graduate school, who are balancing graduate school while working or parenting or caregiving, and those with shared racial, ethnic, or cultural identities, LGBTQ students, women in STEM, etc., or any other group whose social currencies and or capitals might look different from what we traditionally see reflected in academia, or more importantly, what you see within your own department even, all right? So another thing that you want to consider as you're mapping your network is the structure of mentorships. These relationships don't all have to be one-to-one dyadic mentoring relationships. They don't all have to be formal. In fact, in all my years of working with graduate students in mentorship, some of the most fruitful and enduring relationships came out of group co-mentoring among peers, because there's a level of familiarity that can come with working with a larger group or with your peers that's less daunting in many cases than working with one specific mentor in a formal relationship. But just remember that you'll want to have both those formal and informal touch points within your mentoring network. All right, one last consideration for you to think about as you're considering mentoring fit is this: what kind of feedback or support really works best for you? And this is getting back to that really personal, really nebulous, hard to define piece of the mentoring connection. So you'll want to really consider, do you need a cheerleader or someone that can build you up and motivate you? Or do you need a challenger, someone who pushes you and makes demands both of your intellect and your ego? Do you need an educator whose idea of mentorship may involve passing off a lot of suggested readings and who might be otherwise fairly hands-off? Or do you need a guide who provides examples and analogies from their own graduates' experiences and guides you step by step, challenge by challenge? Or maybe do you need a catalyst or ideator who will ask a lot of what if questions that might seem challenging at times, but they're really just prodding you to help you think more deeply into your own research? And meanwhile, some students really need allies who will look out for their best interests. Others need advocates who will talk them up and connect them to larger professional networks. And of course, our needs these ways can vary even from day to day, mood to mood. And again, that's why I suggest at least 3 people under each one of our mentoring buckets.